we're really saying that we're really as pissed off as we claim we are, then why don't you come together and say, there's a million of us here, let's start a party.
Yeah.
If you want to see yourselves in the parliament, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
Right? Why can't you can raise the money. Half the time you're on Instagram taking pictures and doing whatever and you make money off of that. Why aren't we actually taking ourselves seriously?
Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Dennis Ngango and welcome to the very first episode of Defining Conversations. It's a series where young people get to unpack the most pressing and controversial topics of the week. From the 1976 Soweto uprising to the Fees Must Fall movement, we've seen how young people have used unconventional ways to get political impact. Today's episode bears the question, do young people have more power at the polls or in the streets? Before we get into today's video, number one, make sure to subscribe to Defining for more thought-provoking and empowering African content. Number two, shout out to the good people at Grounded Work. They allowed us to film the discussion of today's episode in their space. Grounded is a co-working space where entrepreneurs, freelancers, and students can share the day with like-minded people. Without further ado, let's get into today's conversation.
That question is very tough because there are things happening in government that you cannot necessarily take to the streets or actually take to the poll. You understand, like recent stuff like this Musasa thing that's happening. EFF looting money from grannies in the rural areas. The DA literally building a wall between the rich and the poor. How do you hold these leaders accountable? So every time there's a mess up, when there's a corruption issue, must we say now the youth must be taken to the streets every time?
I think as long as we don't start glorifying the streets. Yes. It's not nice being
in the streets.
And we can't
it's
not like,
that's what I wanted to finish.
I think the one thing that we need to do, because our relationship, the relationship that the youth has to our past in South Africa is almost this weird mysticism that makes it seem as though it's a viable option to do in 1976. It's a last option. Exhaust every single avenue that's actually available to you
to know.
Right? Figure it out. Say, okay, fine, when I vote, this doesn't happen. If I go to civil society, this doesn't work. If I start an NGO, this doesn't work. This and this and this and this and this and that. Try exhaust every single avenue that is possible for you. And then you can go to the streets. There's a weird way in which we draw links to the past such that you feel like nothing has changed. And that's not true.
That's not true.
That's absolutely not true. It's not do or die yet. We're not at the end of it. We have options. What we need to do is do more of this. It's talking. It's using the avenues that your actual talents. Tweet properly. Write read, do whatever. Yeah. You know, we're in a better position than the youth of before who actually who didn't even have the vote option. It was the streets. It was streets yes. Or nothing, right? And you're not in that position yet. And I don't think that we should be thinking, maybe I shouldn't vote or whatnot. If we're really saying that we're really as pissed off as we claim we are, then why don't you come together and say, there's a million of us here, let's start a party.
Yeah.
If you want to see yourselves in the parliament, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
Right? Why can't you can raise the money. Half the time you're on Instagram taking pictures and doing whatever and you make money off of that. Why aren't we actually taking ourselves seriously and saying, okay, genuinely this is a problem for us. Let's come together, organize, and do this.
And it's a shame, the South African youth, we act like we don't have alternatives and options. We're actually being given a chance to actively criticize government officials, government state structures and stuff like that. But we would rather go on Twitter and tweet about it. But then we'll not go there, maybe go to Home Affairs there and ask, sharp, what's wrong with you? Why is your system always off? This is how I can ask. But rather you say, this is how I can help you, or your system is not always off. Yes, awareness is a thing. What comes after awareness?
I think a lot of people, because politics is, I feel to a certain extent, very inaccessible to young people in our country. You have these problems, but you don't know how you can fix them. You don't know all of the channels that there is to be taken to do something about the problems that we have. And I think if politics can be made more accessible, if it can be presented in a way that people can understand, or if people can be educated about it properly in schools, or otherwise, it would be easier for people to be more actively engaged, to actually do something about the problems that we are being faced with.
But people have to want that.
Yes.
People have to want to be educated. When you want to be educated, you can actually go out and say, how do I know about this? If someone says a random fact and you're not sure about it, you Google it because you want to see if it's true.
You must want to read.
You must want to know. It goes back to wanting to know.
Yeah.
And to me, it's a dead-end street if you think that, okay, these are these problems, I don't know how to solve it. The government created these problems. They're not taking responsibility for these problems, but now we think we need to go to them to ask for the solution. The solutions are in ourselves. It's in the communities. We know how our communities function, we know what the problems are, and we know best how to fix it. Not some official sitting in a building making decisions on behalf of that community.
My thing is, as much as we can say, yes, in my community, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to Home Affairs and complain about this and this and this. There are, like Caroline was saying earlier, there are great things that we do not know about, that only our government knows about, that actually affects what happens at the bottom. So I can go to Home Affairs every single week and complain about your queues. But if they don't want to change it at the top for some reason that I don't know, it's not going to happen.
But all I'm saying, I'm not saying go to Home Affairs to complain about an issue or go to your municipality to complain about an issue in your community. I'm saying do it yourself. So if your problem is if your problem is we don't have water in our community and we haven't had water in our community for 30 years, it's not going to help to keep on going to your municipality to ask them. Why? It's this thing about the donkey bumping his head. Why do we keep bumping our heads going to the municipality to Home Affairs? If there's no water, try to solve it ourselves. Sorry?
Why do we have governments in the first place?
I'm asking myself.
If it's like infrastructural issues, like say a community doesn't have water, they don't necessarily have the resources to create that infrastructure. If you already just have a river and a bucket and you're walking 2Ks every day, where are you going to find the money to lay a pipeline? So in that sense, you do need external help, and not everyone's just going to just provide it. You know?
I completely agree, but again, we've been saying government's not helping laying that pipeline. It doesn't help to keep on asking for the pipeline that they're not going to give and they haven't given. We need to think of alternatives. We need to, like you said, go to try the NGOs, do it ourselves, try to get people together, try to get communities together. Two communities, maybe one community can't do it on their own, but two communities working together. The one community needs a pipeline, the other one needs something else, and then you can start working in between. I see no reason for keeping on doing the same thing.
For me, it's not an either or. I think we should go vote. I think we should take to the streets. I think we should be on Facebook, Twitter, etc. We should be speaking to our families. We should be going to Home Affairs. We should also be putting some trust in our government. We should be doing a multitude of things. If I can't get the water, or we don't have water in the community, I should be researching NGOs, plus trying to get the water myself, plus putting pressure on the government to get the water, because I think we have so many multifaceted, complex problems. There are certain solutions that our government can bring. Where they can't, then we must fill the gap, and I think that's why there are more levels than one to protest and to be civilly active.
I really appreciate that we've been emphasizing that in order to understand their role and put emphasis on theirs, we need to also understand and put emphasis on ours, which I think is a very important thing we need to bear in mind. To wrap up this session, everyone's going to get a chance to make their closing statement based on what you've discussed.
A closing statement to the issue of going to the streets. My question to you, Bongani, is that on the streets, who do you find? Like you say, it's the youth. Which youth do you find? Black bodies. Black bodies. And it's not like every youth in South Africa is going to line up with the black youth and say, we understand your struggle, because they don't. They're sitting nice in Kayalami or somewhere and stuff like that. And the people who actually have these issues, just imagine as a black mother knowing that your son has gone to the streets to go fight for rights that she has fought for, and her son actually, or her daughter, dying there. So it's easy to say, let's take it to the streets. The streets are hard, guys. It's a rough thing. And every time when black people protest, we are said we are barbarians, we are this, we are uncivilized. Rather, don't vote for them. Vote for who? It's not like the DA is gonna fix my problems as a black youth. Stop voting for the ANC. And I'm like, we're not voting for the ANC. So we must be very careful of the alternatives that we give to people.
From my side, I believe we should register, we should vote, we should actively participate in our communities. I don't agree with not voting and just passively sitting by and watch our country just go into ruin. We need to actively participate.
It's not voting, not a protest itself.
It's very easy for us, the people sitting here, to talk about politics, you know, because we're educated. We know what Marxist, Leninist, we know all these things, you know, and I just want us as the educated, privileged youth to go back into our communities and educate. You were talking about your brothers earlier on, you know, tell your brothers, okay, listen, this is the state of our country right now. This is what we have to talk about. And talking about politics and what goes on in our lives should be as easy as talking about your lit nights that you had yesterday. That's what I ultimately want for us.
Perfect.
We need, as a youth, to be more practical. We're such a microwave generation. If something is not visual and available to us within the 15-second period, we don't take it in. So we need to have the willingness to be practical, to learn, to educate ourselves especially, and educate one another on various degrees of things. Like, I know tax, I'm a tax consultant. How many of you can say that you know tax? And I should, you know what I mean? These are the things, we should be more engaging. And as a youth, we certainly do have the intellect. We have so much to us. Literally, our phones are the world. But instead of using these phones to change the world, we are out looking for big booty people on websites at 2 a.m. in the night. No, genuinely. You do that. No, I'm just saying. We have the capacity to be doing so much more.
I think also we learned about the importance of being an active citizen and taking the time to educate ourselves and then putting in the labor to educate those who maybe don't want to educate themselves.
I generally took away from this that, look, let's just carve at this mountain from 1,000 different angles all at the same time and find different ways to do it. But in terms of voting, you are affected by the decisions that your government makes. And it's your responsibility to also make sure that the person who's less fortunate in your community can get what they need within their community, whether it's water, whether it's a school or library, whatever. One of the ways that you can do that is by voting for the person that they think can do that. If you throw away your vote, you're throwing away that person's opportunity to gain those things. That's how I view it.
As citizens of this country, we need to take more interest in our politics. You find people saying, I'm not interested in politics, but politics has an interest in every area of your life. I think you should be interested in politics. If you go to university, people that actively partake in university politics are people that most of the time are doing politics. It shouldn't be that. People should want to know about how their countries run, who does what. If someone doesn't do this, how do I hold them accountable? And in closing, I appreciate the whole NGO sentiment, getting people or getting companies to fund our projects. But at the end of the day, we must remember that we still pay taxes. We still give money to this government. I don't think we should let them off the hook that easily and say we're just going to go to an NGO. I appreciate that sentiment, but I'm just saying we every month I pay a cent fee to the government to do something. I'm not happy about it, but I do it.
From my side, just a closing remark is that each year I think we switch cell phone companies. Like, I mean, if we're not happy with MTN, we go to Vodacom or Celsius or Telkom or whatever. Each week we shop at different shops. We go to Spar or Checkers or ShopRite or whatever, and I think we don't apply the same basic principle in politics. I think we don't shift enough. If we're not happy, we don't shift. And I don't think this is it's not just specific people. I think it's not even just people you can say for the last 25 years I voted NC. I think it's for people who voted DA, who've been in the Western Cape and they're not happy with the DA in the Western Cape and they haven't switched the vote just because of party loyalty. I think it's super important. We need to exercise our right of choice, and it's not a right of choice if you choose the same thing repetitively.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of I'm thanking everyone else for their inputs also, because I think everything that has been said is so important. I think for me, firstly, is that I think it's very important that we must educate, inform ourselves and those others around us that we can, so that when you vote or not vote and who you vote for is at least informed and you've reflected on it. And secondly, I think that the important thing for me in terms of youth and involvement in South Africa and in government and in civil society is I think everyone has a different role to play. And we can play more than one role. And just to briefly touch on what Caroline said in the beginning regarding protests and stuff, I agree completely that protesting is a last resort. And I think it's something that we should keep like that, but we must all look at what different roles we can, what we are equipped with, what we may be based at. And I think that the worst thing that we can do is sit aside and do nothing. So if you do, each person, each young South African must do what they're comfortable and able to do, and also not do it for themselves, but do it for others. When I think of whether I'm going to vote or who I'm going to vote for, I don't do it for me. I'm in a position where, like we said, we're in that 1%. I'm not voting for the 1%, I'm voting for the 99%. I think that's an important driving factor when it comes to politics.
We've come now to the end of the very first episode of Defining Conversations. Please do make sure to like and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts with regards to this episode, as well as with regards to this type of content. I've never really done it before on my channel. If you would like to feature on an episode of Defining Conversations, please make sure to hit me up at info@defining.co.za. Till next time.